I'm Matt Landau from vrmb.com, and this is Unlocked, Season 7, Unglamorous. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, the one tool that's recommended more organically by guests on our podcast than any other tool out there. I'll just leave it at that. Bruce Ikelheiner is a vacation rental engineer and the owner of Banjoe Vacations in Asheville and Lake Lure, North Carolina. To be specific, Bruce owns 2 vacation rental properties, one in each destination. But he's reached that inflection point that so many successful vacation rental managers know. He's good at what he does, he enjoys it, he's making good money, and others are approaching him to manage their homes. It's all so exciting that Bruce is hoping to transition out of his engineering job and focus on making memories full-time. In this fun interview, we discuss Bruce's philosophy on how to make an unglamorous job much less annoying, the pickle, when to pull the trigger on investments and hiring that can help you grow, and why vacation rentals as a category are generally speaking so positive, enjoyable, and fun. Let's get into this. Bruce, as I've read it on your website and heard it from you in real life when I visited Asheville, you are a recovering rocket scientist?
That is correct. I spent a long time in school, got a master's and then a PhD in engineering, aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering, and have spent most of my career doing acoustical consulting of one kind or another. Until I started getting deeper into the vacation rental stuff.
So I like to say that everybody brings with them some special skill or background story to apply to their vacation rental business. Are you building rockets and or acoustically consulting in the vacation rental field?
No, I have not. But I will say, like, in my former life, or I guess it still is my current life, I've been self-employed and knowing how just, the basic things of forming a company, getting a bank account and a credit card and setting up accounting processes, all that stuff was incredibly helpful to have known before I got started in the acoustic stuff, or in the vacation rental stuff rather.
And you're still doing some of this acoustic stuff as kind of your main gig with vacation rentals on the side?
I think of it the other way. I think of the vacation rental as my main thing, and I'm still doing the acoustical consulting on the side. One of the things I love about vacation rentals, just in the industry in general, is that you're working with people who are going on vacation, or you're working with owners for whom you're making sort of effortless money for them. Everybody's happy. When I deal with the acoustic stuff, there's never a technical solution to outdoor noise problems. It's always a political solution, and then there's always somebody or everybody who's unhappy with the end result.
I recently told the person who was at the table next to me at the restaurant that they were talking way too loud. Would that be considered acoustic consulting?
You now have all the credentials you need.
And I love how you inverted the ratio of acoustic consulting to vacation rentals, because vacation rentals is where I know you from. Give folks an idea of Banjoe Vacations pre-VRMB Accelerator, like what the business looked like up until about 6 months ago.
I have 2 properties of my own that I manage. I have a house, a lake house on Lake Lure, North Carolina, and I have a downtown condo in Asheville, North Carolina. Right about the time where the accelerator started, I onboarded 2 new properties as a property manager. And I had spent all the time with my own properties sort of eyeing the idea of doing this professionally. The accelerator was super helpful for me. Many of the aspects were things that I was already thinking about and sort of lining up. And the accelerator helped sort of fuse and lock into place some of the things that I was already trying to implement.
And what was the feeling, just out of curiosity? Because I think a lot of people reach this little inflection point in their vacation rental career, and they're wondering whether managing other people's properties is worth getting serious about. What was your general feeling about that direction?
I spend a tremendous, or I spent and still do spend a lot of my time and energy coming up with ways to do less work. Uh, I just try to automate as many things as possible. And so I put myself in a position where I onboarded two properties pretty much back to back in about a month. Um, and while getting all that started up was tough, once the properties were up and running through my system, my workload did not increase appreciably. And that just tells me that I've got plenty of bandwidth to add more properties.
So it's like, wait a minute, this is a craft that I like and I'm pretty good at with my own properties. I bring on two outsider properties and my workload doesn't necessarily increase. I want to do this more.
Yeah, basically. North Carolina has really tight trust accounting laws, and so I have to be like my bookkeeping. I've had to up my bookkeeping. But other than that, a little interaction with the guests, a little interaction with the cleaners, and I've got everything else streamlined so that it just sort of clicks along by itself.
And I'd like to dive into some of the areas that we've worked on together, because I think at that turning point, that you start having to think about different kinds of problems and solutions. So it's no longer just something you're doing for your family homes. It's now, you called it the turning point of becoming professional. And from a high level, is there any way that you, now having your hands on some of the first steps, kind of characterize that turning point? Is it organization? Is it strategy? Like how would you describe that to people?
The first thing is you have somebody else's money, you have somebody else's interest in mind, and that is the homeowners. But I just try to make sure that I align what I do with what the homeowners would want, what I would want as a homeowner. Um, but I'm finding the big change, and one that I'm struggling a little bit with right now is bringing on new properties. That's not, if you're just managing your own properties, you might want to buy another house. It's hard to find it to get the right house, but that's a different problem. Trying to convince pretty much a perfect stranger to hand the keys over to you. That's a completely different thing that I'm still trying to figure out.
The first thing the lens that we look through in that property acquisition discussion is your niche or your specialty. What kinds of properties do you want? So I'm curious, first of all, you have two destinations that you're dealing with, downtown Asheville and Lake Lure. Are there big differences in terms of those two markets?
Absolutely. So the Asheville scene is very much a thing where people come in for a couple days. They go to the breweries. There's the Biltmore Estate, this massive house that's here in Asheville. They go hiking in the mountains, but it's usually a couple days of really focused, visiting of the city of Asheville. Properties tend to be smaller, turnover rates are higher, but then you go to the lake, and that's very much more of a family, like multi-generational type of place. You have, people want 3-4 bedrooms, sleep 10 people, and then they stay for longer periods of time.
And what prompts you to start looking a little bit more intentionally at the lake as opposed to Asheville in terms of focusing your growth?
One thing is that the city of Asheville actually passed a moratorium on any new vacation rentals. So in terms of a toxic environment for vacation rentals, we're right there. There are legal vacation rentals in town, and I will definitely try to solicit some of those properties. The other thing is just dollars and cents. A bigger property rents for more money. From my standpoint, it's the same amount of effort to manage. A 4-bedroom takes the same amount of effort for me as a 1-bedroom studio. in terms of interaction with the guests and the cleaners and the accounting, all that stuff is pretty much the same. But you take a percentage of the revenue. You definitely make, for me, I definitely make more money on the bigger properties. So that's definitely more attractive.
And talk to us about the other managers in the area and how that kind of opens your eyes in terms of opportunity.
Yeah, there's a property manager. One of my first properties that joined the program came from another property manager who hadn't done even like the most basic things. Like they didn't, like, there was a coffee maker that was broken, and they just never got around to replacing the coffee maker. They never responded to the owners when the owners had questions, and they just were making the owners crazy. And I can't believe for a second that their experience with that property manager is unique. So I feel like there is low hanging fruit in terms of getting new owners in that market. The Asheville market is a much more sophisticated area where there are some really high quality, like really good property managers. I had a funny experience the other day where I mailed out my little 4x6 property management request card, like the direct mail card, to a bunch of people. And I sent one to myself. And in the same mail delivery where I got my little 4x6, I got a 6x12 from one of the other local property managers, more glossy, better pictures. I definitely felt outclassed at that point.
So who did you choose?
I go with the little guy every time.
Agreed. So if you're identifying this manager in the Lake region that's making his homeowners crazy, and you recognize that basically to offer a better product, you just have to make people less crazy, which is not too hard to do, hopefully. What kind of aspects of homes have you zeroed in on in terms of your portfolio?
That's a great question, and one that I am actually struggling with in a way. I try to filter. I'm doing my own address collection, which I go to the county and I get a long list of addresses, and I try to filter down. To some extent, when you're just looking at addresses, it's really hard to figure out what the property looks like. But when I think about, I would love to have the giant lakefront house, and I haven't gotten to the point where someone comes to me and say, "Hey, I've got a trailer up in the woods. Do you want to manage that?" The answer is probably going to be no. I don't want to manage that. It's a situation where I would turn away work, but I want to have a place that I would want to go to, and that's, I think. I try to do all the stuff as if I was the guest or I was the homeowner. And so places that I would like to stay are definitely places that I want to try to target.
And in terms of price point?
Well, the higher price points make more money for the property manager. There's no question. The price point for houses at the lake, if you're not lakefront, it goes down pretty quickly. Like, lakefront is obviously a huge draw. But there's some beautiful places like back in the mountains that are, they're just gorgeous. They have little creeks or something behind them. So I'm game for just about anything. I'm going to be all about sort of papering the town with my direct mailing to try to get as many responses as possible. Then I can start, choosing who I will or will not accept into the program.
And do you have a feeling about when you'll be able to start getting picky? Because I think this is a very common little conundrum at the beginning when you want to bring on more properties and scale. You can't be choosy.
I'm really curious when that's going to happen. I think it's going to happen when I'm too busy doing something else and I see a property and it just doesn't look appealing. That I'm looking forward to having that as be my next problem, where I have to choose between people who want to join the program.
And you are dealing with a version of that problem right now, which is this conundrum between where do you spend your limited time versus where do you spend your limited money. And I think in a dream scenario, we would all love to hire the world's best vacation rental manager with all the connections in town and call it a day, but that's just not reality. How are you dealing with that little crossroads?
That's a tough one. And I definitely am leaning heavily on technology.
And folks, I'd just like you to pay careful attention to what Bruce is about to say here. The way he views technology in his growth process is key to unlocking time and energy in order to focus on the stuff that really matters or the stuff that you really enjoy.
It's funny to say this. I've worked hard so that I don't have to work. I've worked to try to put policies and procedures in place that make it so that I have less that I actually have to do. But there's still there's always a ton to do. I was at the laundromat today. I was washing, we needed new linens, and I just washed a whole bunch of linens so I can deliver to one of the properties. That was my morning. I should have been filtering or at the same time, I need to be filtering another mailing list so that I have to create the next mailer to go out. I can hire, I can go to Upwork and hire somebody to help me do the mailers, which is something I really need to do. That, like, handing off that work to somebody takes time and energy from me. And I struggle with when to turn the keys over to somebody else to do stuff for me.
How is the process of, you said you work harder to work less. How is the process of automating something, let's say, different from creating a system or a standard operating procedure for somebody else to do it?
Well, putting writing down what I do is something, again, it's as anyone who does property management knows, the list of things that you should be doing is always something you shouldn't look at. It'll depress you. Writing down, like, putting policies and procedures is one thing, and that's a useful step, but paying somebody to do that is a whole nother deal. I know from working as a consultant, hiring people, and anybody knows this, hiring people is probably one of the toughest things that you can do. And at my scale right now, there's nobody I could hire that would make any sense that isn't just a contract worker or something like Upwork, where it's just, they'll work for the project and then move on. There's so many software packages and things out there that can help you deal with things, so that you don't, like, little things. Like, there's this thing called Zapier, which is a sort of a scripting piece of software website, and it combs my email and peels out invoices or receipts for me and puts them away for me. I just email myself something, and then that takes care of it. Just all kinds of little pieces like that save me little chunks of time here and there. And at the end, I think it ends up adding up.
Are there any other tools that you're finding super useful in the software space?
Obviously, the property management software is an absolute requirement. I have mine. It sends out, I can't even tell you how many emails it sends out, and text messages. It's so funny because people are like, oh my gosh, Bruce is so responsive. We get all this information from him. He's so great. And I don't even know who these people are. I've never corresponded with them once. Shh, don't tell anybody.
All right. So we got your property management software that's sending out all the emails that you'd otherwise be doing manually. What are you using, by the way?
I use OwnerRez.
Okay. That's a popular one inside the community.
It is. I'm super cost sensitive about everything. Just because I feel like it's so easy to have the death of 1,000 cuts. And OwnerRez does so much for me. It's really great. And actually, I'm just transitioning over to OwnerRez has a link with QuickBooks. And so that's going to be a whole thing. It's going to start dealing with all of my data entry, because that takes up hours a week. Just, you got to be North Carolina trust accounting. You got to be really on the ball, and that'll help make sure that is squared up, and that you can't, if it does it automatically, it's much harder to make a mistake, and that'll save me time. But that costs money. The QuickBooks Online costs money. It's a monthly charge.
So when you take a look at the financial document that we played around with, or the pro forma, and you plug and play numbers, do you get nervous that the margins are so small, or do you get excited based on the scaling opportunities?
I was just looking at that the other day. When we first started, I hadn't really signed up with much more than just my property management software. Since then, I've signed up with a couple of different things that have monthly charges, and I did update the cost estimates, and it's, I'm spending, $800-900 a month just on things that keep the business rolling without, they don't generate income, they just save me time. But for me, that's totally worth it. At my scale, I really only have two managed properties. I feel like those are very separate from my own properties. The managed properties are what has to fund all the operations, and the $900, it's totally covered by my management fee. So I feel like those two properties are just going to sort of fund the background, and when I start adding more properties, the expenses aren't going to scale with the number of properties. They're going to stay largely the same, and so hopefully it'll start becoming more and more profitable. But I look at the monthlies, like monthly expenses for me are just nickel and dime, will just kill you in the long run.
So you're actually viewing this management side of the business, at least in the early stages, as a way to cover costs of managing your own homes.
No, I said that incorrectly. I see the two properties that I have under management. I feel like those are funding the management business at this point.
I see. Got it.
My own properties are helping fund me.
Okay, I like that even more. And when we are talking about you, I mean, we've just discussed areas that you look to automate. We've discussed tools that you use to reduce your workload. Yet at the end of the day, I think, as we have concluded with so many of our forum colleagues, there's certain stuff that only you can do, only you should do, and only you are the best at. So talk to us about kind of what those things are and where they fit in this growing business, you think.
Well, I definitely am I respond to all my inquiries. I do that like right away. I think that if I feel like you have seconds to grab somebody's attention. Somebody's spinning through Airbnb or Vrbo or whatever, and they're trying to pick up a property, and they send you a little message, "Hey, I have a question." If you're not there and responding, they're going to move on. Somebody else is gonna, or they're going to find something else. So I do try to be super responsive and get right in with the guests as quick as possible. I do that pretty much up until they book. and then the property management software takes over with all the other the transactional stuff. So I feel like my direct interaction with the guests is something I would be loath to give up. It's a little bit of a drag because that's something that happens at all hours, at all times. I'm not going to do it in the middle of the night, but 10 o'clock at night, somebody says something and I'm up. I will get right back to them as quick as I can. So that is something that I would not let go of. Or if I did, I'd be very careful.
And that's something that's mentioned in your reviews pretty regularly. So that's like validation to keep doing it, right?
Yes. Like I said, people, Bruce is so responsive. And it's also things like when something goes wrong, if something goes wrong with the property, which, it always does, I try to get right back right away. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Even if it's nothing I can take care of, I want them to feel like I'm hearing them and, I'm validating that they're having a problem, even if I have no intention of taking care of it at that moment. Mm-hmm. As long as the guests feel heard, then that usually that solves most of the issue. Mm. And telegraphing to them, like the more that they know what to expect when they show up, the less you are to have any problems.
Mm-hmm. Making sure they feel heard.
Yeah. Yeah. People like if somebody calls with a problem, then if they contact the property manager with a problem, the first thing they want is the property manager to say, "Oh my gosh, you're having a problem. I'm so sorry." The next thing they want to hear is how you're going to fix the problem. But you don't want to you don't want to send something to the property manager and then don't hear anything, or, get put on a wait, like a music on the phone or something like that. You don't want that. Then you just feel like you're just working, for a mega. You're renting from a mega corp, and nobody's really human there who cares.
And now, a word from our sponsors. We have on the line Sean Miller, the president of Point Central, and Jeremy Gall, the founder of Breezeway. Sean, when it comes to profit, the ultimate goal of any vacation rental management company, where does Point Central fit in that formula?
This type of technology can drive a lot of profitability by helping to shift work from reactive to proactive. So in Point Central's case, the way we bring this forward are through things like our HVAC analytics program, where we help property managers identify problematic HVAC systems before they trouble the guest, and so they can take care of them at a lower cost point, or things like our water analytics, where we can detect leaks early and help property managers go take care of those before they have the unexpected indoor swimming pool incident.
If you'd like to do a demo with Point Central, head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB. They're now taking on vacation rental managers with less than 25 properties, which is a complete game changer. Profit margins in the vacation rental industry are not glamorous. They're small and they are shrinking. Jeremy, when it comes to profitability, whether it's making more money or avoiding spending more money, losses, how does Breezeway fit into that?
The hard work that goes into property management usually results in, quite a lot of expenses, right? There's a lot of operating expenses that go into this. Most folks aren't in a position, the way the market is now, to just reduce the amount of work that they're going to be doing. They're actually doing more work. So with Breezeway, with efficient task management, you can optimize the work that you're doing, and you can open up opportunities to do more work. That can sound scary to people, but the idea of more work is tying that work to service revenue, oftentimes which property managers can keep 100% of that service revenue, which can really change the game on your profit margins. Things like early check-in, late checkout, really timing and understanding, optimizing how your contractors or your staff are going to be able to go in and turn over properties can open up that opportunity for more service revenue, or service engagement through messaging, where you're actually offering more services and opportunities to generate some profit with guest services.
If you'd like to do a demo with Breezeway and get free implementation valued at $1,000, head over to breezeway.io/VRMB.
We had one problem, or it's an ongoing problem at the lake house. We had a foundation issue I had to address, and in the process, they destroyed the retaining wall, and so I have a tarp. There's this tarp on the front of the house to keep erosion from going until I can repair the retaining wall. And I send a picture and a message to all the guests who were staying there, just telling them what happened and what to expect. I'm not giving anybody a discount, because the lake is still there, the house, everything is still there. It's just part of it is now ugly because of this tarp. But I send that out, and when people show up, they see the tarp. There's no big deal. If they didn't know that and they showed up, I think there would be a problem.
So if the main priority there is Bruce maintains his role of proactive host, both from the moment the inquiry comes in to basically the moment anything goes wrong. That's on the traveler side. What about as you now start to grow the management company? What are your main priorities there? Like, what are your owners looking for?
I think it's the same. Well, it depends on the owner. I think most owners, what they really want is they want you to send them a check every month, a fat check every month, and they don't want to mess with it. They want to be able to show up and have the house clean and ready. And other than that, they don't want to deal. But at the same time, I want to make sure that they know that I'm working for them. And so, like the one of the houses I manage, I don't know how or why, but the hinges in the bathroom were installed upside down, and and these are old hinges, and the hinge pin just fell out of the one of the bottom.
It sounded incredibly heavy just now.
Yeah, sorry about that. So they dunk. So I went over there and I replaced the hinge. It took me 15 minutes. It's like $3 of a hinge, and it took me 15 minutes to install a new hinge. But I took a quick picture and I sent the owner a text. Hey, I fixed this. Here you go. Now I'm going to charge him for the $3. I don't charge for stuff like for little maintenance stuff like that, but I'm going to charge him the $3 for the hinge. It's weird. I don't charge him for my time, but I do charge him for a $3 hinge.
Are you starting to think about that differently? Like, can you feasibly be going around and replacing all the hinges with 15 or 20 properties?
That's another one of these conundrums. And there was actually there's a it's a bunch of Facebook groups. Somebody posted something on a Facebook group the other day about, how do you deal with a handyman? And I don't have the kind of workload that I can hire somebody to do that for me. So until I do, that is going to be a Bruce job. There's ways to sort of, have somebody on retainer or something, but if it really hits the fan, right now I don't have a hinge replacing guy. That's me. I'm the chief cook and head bottle washer for just about everything right now.
So do you think that you will have trouble relinquishing any of that control, or are those things that you'll, the moment you possibly can, offload to somebody better?
Maintenance stuff, I would offload that in a heartbeat.
Okay.
I feel like it is a waste of time, especially going to Lake Lure, because Lake Lure's it's a 45-minute drive from here. So 45 minutes down, 15 minutes to put a hinge in, 45 minutes back. I mean, that's
a $3 hinge.
Yeah, for a $3 hinge, for which I charge the owner $3, right? But fortunately, that does not happen that often. I try to stay on top of anything. Like the cleaners tell me if stuff is going on. I'm there at least once a week, and I can get stuff done when I'm there. But relinquishing stuff like maintenance is something I would love to do. But that's especially for the place in Lake Lure. It's a remote mountain community, and it's really hard to find reliable people, especially if you have just odd jobs once in a while.
And I know that the returns, the revenue coming into these homeowners so far has been really good, even after you've taken your commissions out. What are you using kind of as your main metrics of success as you grow this thing?
Well, the two managed properties I'm doing, one I took over from a friend who was self-managing, and the other one I took over from this manager who was doing a terrible job. For both of those properties, in the first year of managing, I've already increased their revenue. So I feel like as a homeowner, the bottom line for them is that the house is not broken when the guests stay and that they get paid. But for me, I think that the real thing is to make sure that they do really well. Like I feel like any property I manage should outperform other properties, just through careful revenue management and just staying on top of all the details. It's a business of 1,000 little details.
Can we talk about the revenue management for a second? Because I know, being in a region that doesn't have a huge long history of vacation rentals, your experience with the tools that are supposed to make your life easier, the pricing tools, has not been optimal.
Right. The Lake Lure area, there's, I think, 100 houses around the lake, and they vary in size, like dramatically, size and quality, just dramatically, from little like fisher cabins to, big 8-bedroom behemoths on the lake. And so I really wanted to use the pricing tools. I thought that sounded like a great idea, like something I don't have to deal with. And I never got the sense that they understood the market, those automated pricing tools. And they work really well on massive amounts of data. Like at the coast, you go to the North Carolina coast, and it's just, just the whole, just blocks and blocks and blocks of vacation rentals, all about the same size and shape. And those tools work fantastic for that. So when that was failing for me, I just did the elbow grease technique, and I just went around the lake, surfed up the properties on Airbnb and VRBO. I checked their prices. I looked at pictures. I sort of gave myself a quality score on the properties. I ended up making this huge spreadsheet. I haven't updated it in the last couple of years, but it ended up being very instructive. Um, I learned all kinds of stuff. Like a lot of the property managers don't change. Like some properties have the same price all year round, weekend, weekday, doesn't matter. January, July, same price. Um, and some of them look like they're well priced, but by just going through and just doing that physically by myself, I got a much better feel for how the pricing could work out. And so I've been using sort of my own, like the Bruce metric to come up with pricing for the lake properties. The Asheville, it works. The tools work better for the Asheville area, but not so much for the lake.
I feel like knowing how to do that manually, or at least having an understanding of what the numbers are like without using an automation or tool. It's kind of a running theme I've noticed about the way that you're growing your business, that you know how to do everything from the 2-property portfolio. And if something breaks, you know how to fix it. Or if something seems like it's off, you know how to anticipate it. Is that kind of, you think, this understanding that you're bringing to the management company as it grows? A granular way of doing things?
That's a really good way to describe it. I had in my engineering job, I've done some huge scientific studies, and one of the things that this old friend of mine said about that, he would talk about marinating in the data. So you got all this information and you just massage it and look at it this way, look at it that way, and you marinate in the data. And I feel like that's kind of what I've been doing in the vacation rental space. I've just been absorbing, all kinds of information and really trying to get the vibe of everything. And it's helped me out. I don't get surprised, things I tend to figure out where things are going. The one place I'm struggling, like I said before, is getting new properties, but I haven't been slamming that like I should be to help grow the business.
So is the primary focus now to begin attracting the right kinds of property owners?
Yes, absolutely. The management of the properties and management of the guests, I feel like for me is a solved problem. I'm still doing a couple things to streamline or reduce my workload, but going forward, like the next month is pretty much I'm going to be working on putting out direct mail flyers and just trying to work the angle to get more properties. Yeah. So that I can make a selection.
If I understood that correctly, if you can acquire more of the quality properties that you want, the other problem of guests kind of just solves itself.
Yeah. The process, it sounds silly, but just the simple process of getting a guest to come and spend good money at your property, dealing with them, making sure that they have everything they need for their stay, all that kinds of stuff, dealing with the finances of all that. That's, for me, that's no longer a problem. That's easy peasy. Eventually if I end up with so many properties that becomes difficult, that's a different problem of just dealing with volume. But I haven't, I'm nowhere close to that right now.
And when do you think you'll be bringing on your first key hire? Because that's like the $1 million question, right?
Yeah. Wait, when can I hire another Bruce? I've been wondering about that a lot. My goal is to hire someone like me at some point, a manager, someone who I can trust to answer the messages when they come in. I don't know how long that's going to be, but that's probably, 15, 20 properties, I'm thinking, depending on the quality of the property, is what I'm thinking. Maybe not full time, but that would be great to have somebody who I could rely on to do that kinds of stuff. I feel a very strong responsibility. If you hire somebody, you need to be able to really take care of them. That's, I think, something that's really important. You can't just hire somebody, and just throw them crumbs. You need to hire somebody and take really good care of them. And I would want to make sure that there was enough, that I was still getting paid enough when I'm paying the hire, right? Because that money comes straight out of my pocket as a sole proprietor. I pay somebody, it's got to come out of my pocket.
And would the idea there be, when that day does come and when you do break through to that next slightly more streamlined stage, that you continue doing your other work? Is that just something that you always like to have a couple different things going on?
No. I've really enjoyed the engineering stuff I've done. I think I was mentioning before, one of the things about vacation rentals is all these little details, and they're important. But if the guest runs out of toilet paper, because that's a detail that you dropped, that's one of my responses. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then, I will or will not try to get over there in time to get them some new toilet paper. With the engineering things, if you drop a detail, it could be a big deal. It could be a lawsuit. It could, it just, the consequences are just much bigger, and the stress level is much higher. My short-term goal is to not have is to have enough business going on with the vacation rental that I don't have to do any more engineering.
And what is it about the vacation rental stuff that you consider, so that keeps you going, that keeps you motivated? What is it that comes in that makes you realize you're in the right place right now?
Well, it's kind of along the lines of why I moved to Asheville in the first place. It's a good, if you can pull it off, it's really cool to live in a place where other people want to vacation. That's I live in a place where people like plan all year to come visit. And so with the vacation rental stuff, you're mostly dealing with people on vacation. They're happy. They're excited to come. I give them advice and recommendations on things to do. Oh my gosh, we had such a great time. And that's just really a fulfilling feedback when people end up having a great time. I was in a former life, I was a ski bum. I lived in Jackson Hole, and I worked the front desk at a hotel. And every time somebody comes in the door, they're just showing up for vacation. They're like, woohoo, I'm on vacation. It can be exhausting to live in the middle of that. Like in Jackson Hole, that was exhausting eventually. But here in Asheville, there's regular people having regular jobs here. But people come and visit, they have a great time, and they thank me for it. And it just makes me feel happy.
I absolutely love how Bruce sums that up. I'm going to try to share my takeaway from this interview as straightforward as possible. We are in the business of making memories. If we do a good job, our guests have memorable stays, and we get paid handsomely. And like many of the world's greatest vacation rental managers that we've met on this podcast, that job or calling can scale. For Bruce, he's arrived at the inflection point, and maybe you're getting there soon. Maybe you remember that point from years past, or maybe you have no interest in getting there ever, and that's great too. And Bruce, by the way, if somebody wants to reach out, what's your email address?
Well, there's the website, banjoevacations.com, and it's BANJOE vacations.com. It's actually named after my family. So Bruce is the B, AN is my daughter Anna, JO is my wife Jo, and E is my daughter Erin. So banjoevacations.com and Bruce at banjoevacations.com.
Thanks. And if Bruce and his learnings resonated with you, listener, Or if you're at a similar crossroads or inflection point and would like to tap a brain trust of nearly 1,000 independent owners and managers for support, join Bruce and myself in our private VRMB Communities Forum at vrmb.com/join, where we've added some awesome videos of our members in action. Until next time.